Okay. So hello, everyone. I'm Sergio. This is the community SIG meeting on AsyncAPI. Remember that this is being recorded. And yeah, today there is no Lukasz around and I'm trying to do this. So yeah, bear with me. Bear with me. Okay, if you want to introduce yourself, if it's your first meeting, I don't think there is any new person here, but if you want to take the opportunity, feel free to introduce yourself right now. Okay. Also, if you want to make questions upfront, or yeah, feel free to interrupt and make them, or otherwise wait for the end of the meeting so you can be also making them. Okay, so what's the agenda? Let me share the screen. Good. Okay, so this guy here, Sergio Moya, which is me, I'm going to talk a bit about the new release that is going to happen next month, the 2.4 release. And then Jonas is going to talk about bindings and the relation between bindings and schemas. So let's start. I'm going to start speaking about this. Yeah, release 2.4 of the spec is going to happen next month. If you don't know about the release cadence, this is what we plan to have. We had one release in January. We are going to have another release on April, another in June, and another one in September. This doesn't mean it should happen the very first week of each month or the last week, right? So it's just around the month. It depends on the work we have to. Hey, Lukasz, hello.
Yeah, sorry, folks. Emergency.
It's fine. Do you want to take it, or I can continue it? It's my turn now. So
continue.
So as I was saying, 2.4 is gonna be released next month. It means April. There is already this. Sorry, because at the same time this issue created with the whole process of releasing. There is also a guideline that recently updated Dale, which is amazing because everything I had to do, it's here. So I just had to follow the guide. So there is also a new issue template that looks like this. So even the template of the issue I didn't create, that is just automatic. But I had to do something, right? So we already have the release branches, which is the 2022-04 release. There is one on each main repository involved in the release, which is the spec JSON schemas, and the parser GS. So what that means is that anyone can start contributing to those release. Any new feature that comes and that it's a candidate for being released in the 2.4 can directly target, the pull request can directly target this branch. I also created the draft notes for this. It's not linked here yet, but there is nothing, basically just the announcement, and that's it. What else? Well, here it's everything I did. So all the branches are up to date with master as well. And the most important part here, this is something I'm adding on top of what the guidelines said. So I wanted to put all the work, all the potential work that can be included in this version here. The only one confirmed is the very first one, the make servers variables object available under components. This is already, all the PRs are there, are reviewed, so it's just a matter of merging them. The others are under investigation if we can or not make it for 2.4. And yeah, basically that's all. I'm not gonna extend this a lot. There is nothing else to say, I guess, apart from calling maintainers to help with the release once everything is merged. And also contributors to take this opportunity and make their contributions so they can make it for 2.4. Yeah, any question?
So basically we know that 2.4 will happen because there's one feature at least.
Yes, this one here. And potentially, I mean, or allowing grouping servers or the introduction of environments, it could go in. They both are very similar, so they can be merged together if it makes sense. And there is not a lot of work there to do. But we'll see. Cool. So if there are no more questions, I guess, Jonas, it's your turn.
Yeah. Okay, so let me find the issues. I guess we can start with this one. So there is a proposal for moving all our JSON schema documents for our bindings to our main JSON schema repository, where the JSON schema document for the spec itself lies. There has been some discussion back and forth whether we should do it. And I think the consensus is more or less that we are moving it, but there is still some things that needs to be figured out. One of Magic's concerns is that once we move the bindings, is to how we integrate those JSON schema documents into the main JSON schema spec, and whether we should do that. Because currently with our parser implementation, we kind of do the validation in kind of like 2 or 3 steps, where we validate the entire spec, and then not even sure we actually validate the bindings at the moment. Now that I think about it,
We don't.
We don't know.
Because we don't have access to the JSON schemas.
Right. But the idea is whether we need to integrate it or whether we should do this 2-step kind of validation where we do it separately. The next question that comes up in terms of whether we should move it is, well, where should they be moved to, and how do we correlate that to the main JSON schema spec documents? And this is a discussion we have in, let's see if I can find out, that we have here, because we have no idea yet how to actually do like how we tie our bindings to a specific version of the spec. I don't think anyone is championing this at the moment, but there is some suggestions to do it in terms of compatibility between versions. So for example, for version 1 of the bindings, we say that we are compatible between version 2 and let's say 2.4. But anything beyond those, the bindings no longer are compatible. That is at least one suggestion at the moment. So if you have any thoughts or ideas, please bring them to the table. But that is more or less the current state.
So basically, the versioning, lack of the answer for the versioning is blocking us from any decision, basically, right? Because even if we want to move it to JSON, the schemas to the other schemas, we still don't know how to integrate them with the main schema, right? Like,
yeah. One thing we could do is not care in the beginning, same as we have with like how it is now, basically, and just place all of the bindings in a bindings folder. And that is the same as like the current setup that we have in the bindings repository. So in that way, we don't make any breaking changes and we don't make any decisions now, but it's something for later.
but it doesn't give us anything, right? I mean, we just change the location of the files, but I mean, what you're saying is that move, but not integrate with main schema. Or
that's at least the beginning, yeah. Like how to get them moved. Afterwards, of course, we have to figure out how to achieve this.
Yeah, the point is, I guess you're saying this because we can work in parallel in two things, right? Like moving is one thing and the versioning is another thing, right? Considering that we are going to fix or introduce the versioning on bindings, which I don't know. Yeah, from my point of view, versioning is the critical part here, as Lukasz said. So if we don't fix that, the effort of moving can be postponed, in my opinion, and instead working on the version, unless someone wants to take it, you know, why not?
yeah, I think that the biggest, like at least for me, in case of bindings, whenever I take some voice in the discussion, is the problem is that I personally cannot, I don't have a vision in my head like how it would look like now. Like I know we had this discussion about versioning, that you have to mark that the binding is compatible with spec between 2.0 and 2.4 or whatever. But we are basing these opinions on like not on a real example. I mean, so what I'm trying to say is that we don't have a nice example like a simulation that, for example, okay, I have now a spec, let's say with Kafka bindings. I have a AsyncAPI spec with Kafka binding, and let's say we enable validation, okay, and then we don't have a simulation like some fake simulation on how it evolves over versions. Like we how to explain it? Like you remember when you were working on this intent-driven API, you were kind of simulating, like trying to make some breaking changes in the spec to see how it affects the API. And I have a feeling it's something like this is also needed in the discussion about versioning of the bindings, because we can't really we can't really say how this versioning should work. Even this idea with saying that binding is compatible with version 2 and 2.4. I mean, it's just an idea, but it's not based on any example actually.
That's true. Yeah.
So yeah, it would be nice to have someone who can jump in and do it.
That's a good point.
I mean, it is a really interesting issue to work on, to be honest. I'm not saying I'm gonna be the champion because I have no more bandwidth, but I'm encouraging others to jump in.
But this is not related to 3.0, right? It's why did it like just curious why it popped up just now? Like because we don't have, as you noticed, Jonas, we don't have it selfed yet. So why all suddenly? How did it pop up? Like where did it came from?
It was because of the rework with splitting out the definitions. I kind of wanted to have our JSON schema documents in a kind of stable state. And now we are kind of swaying, what's it called, like not really sure how to actually achieve what we want to achieve. And it was through those thoughts that I've kind of wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
I think does anyone have any questions regarding those issues or? I think that's more or less my issue, I think.
Maybe it makes sense to write in the issue, sorry, exactly what we have to do. Just to avoid people to have to read everything because it's a big no. What are the features that it should fulfill, right? Like tooling should be able to get one particular or compatible binding version. And well, at the end, it's only this one, I guess.
Yeah, I think I can not make a conclusion, but make a too long didn't read and try and simulate how it actually works with when the spec changes and see if it makes sense.
But
cool, that would be perfect. Yeah. So yeah, where to start?
One thing, it doesn't have to change if the spec changes, right? That doesn't have to do anything with a new version of the spec, or I guess
not necessarily, but it depends.
I guess what I'm not sure what Lukasz mentioned about simulating. What's the relation? So I guess it's simulating how it will look like, right? Not trying to look at the spec on looking for breaking changes. It's just how it would, a proof of concept, I guess, right?
Yes, simulating basically. So we have this account, this super simple account example, I think, right? AsyncAPI document that is by default loaded on Studio, I think. But yeah, anyway, I think you know what I mean. So there's a super simple document, and enrich it with some Kafka binding information, like just one specific information that is now in the Kafka binding. And it's state for like, and it's, let's say it's AsyncAPI document 2.3 and some Kafka details. And now just simulate, like basically try to understand that you create this document, and all suddenly we release parser that supports binding validation. And so, for example, your document is working fine with this parser because the parser contains also the binding schema. It's integrated with the main JSON schema. So basically, the AJ file, another JSON validator,
AJV.
AJV, AJ file. AJV, it consumes, it compiles the JSON, AsyncAPI JSON schema, but it also compiles the binding schemas because they're referenced. So basing on the information from JSON schema, it validates your document, AsyncAPI document, and it knows that like it's valid because your information in Kafka binding it's string, whatever name of the property. And then like envision, like let's say Dale or Laurent add something to the binding in the binding repo to the Kafka binding. Let's say rename the field, and then once they do it, they make a change in JSON schema, and the JSON schema changes in this. Basically in the parser because it compiles new schema. And first of all, like what happens with the document? It starts failing even though it's still 2.3. So in theory, it's valid document, but it's gonna fail because there's a problem with the name of the Kafka binding property because it changed. So from that point, kind of simulate what has to happen, like what has to be changed, what has to be introduced in the schema so that your document is still valid. It's still valid. It's still validating. How to say it? It still successfully validates for AsyncAPI 2.3 because it's still valid document. It's just the binding version changed. So in the binding, excuse me. In the binding, we also have this property where we specify the version of the binding. So maybe that's enough actually, and we don't have to do anything. And it's just some additional property on the JSON schema. But yeah, without example, for example, me, I don't have a clear answer how that would work. And that's what I mean by simulating, like just answering these questions. Because that would be the easiest, like without, because there are many different ways how we can integrate these bindings into the parser. It doesn't have to be through references in the AsyncAPI, JSON schema. It can be like, I think Maciej suggests that it's just separate and it's just another step of the validation, that bindings are treated like something individual. But this is adding complication. I think the best is if it's just treated as a part of the main AsyncAPI schema. And that's the simplest one. And yeah, basically, so Kuda, answering your question, like, so that's how it works. Like you have in the spec JSON schema, as far as I remember the name of the repo, we have AsyncAPI schema. It's included in the parser, in the runtime parser, AGV library compiles the JSON schema and is able to validate AsyncAPI document basing on the JSON schema as a first stage, because there's some additional manual validation logic in the parser, but the core validation happens with AGV, and we need to answer like how it will work once we integrate binding JSON schemas with AsyncAPI JSON schema and start validating with AGV. How we make sure that my AsyncAPI document 2.3 with Kafka binding 0.5 will still work with parser, even though we release next version of the Kafka binding. I hope that makes sense.
An interesting problem as well is, for example, the Kafka bindings actually references the schema definition in like the Kafka binding itself. I sent a link in chat. So how would that work when we have multiple versions of the spec? But here it's basically only targeted a single specific version of the spec. I don't think it needs to be solved in the same issue, but it's kind of like, I actually didn't see this.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but this one is, that's how it works now, but it can of course be changed. Once we move bindings into the repo, we will not point to some specific version, but the current one, right? It's going to be a reference to the file system. You know what I mean?
I think so.
So it's not like, now it's like 2.77, just to be sure that it's not gonna break anything. But once we have this, for example, this message .json schema is in the spec JSON schema repo, then it's gonna reference a schema definition from the repo. So it's gonna be released together, right? So it's always gonna be the latest.
What about earlier versions? That's where the problem kind of seeps in, right? Because if the bindings, like, if the 0.2 version of the bindings are paired together with 2.0 of the spec, but the spec changes major version, so does the bindings, because whatever is not compatible anymore. How do you reference the 2.x basically version of the spec, right? In the old bindings. So we're gonna have some issues there probably, or issues. Yeah.
So yeah, that's also a good point, that it's part of the investigation simulation.
Another thought that just came to mind is I don't think we can merge our splitting of JSON schema files, because in the current setup, there is no way of the, okay, let's rephrase that. When you define a payload for an operation or for a message, with the split functionality, it assumes that it's always the async API JSON schema variant. But if you use a different schema format, it still validates the payload towards that, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Did that make sense? Probably not.
Was it a question or?
It was a question, and I think it was a split between both. Let me check. Never mind. It doesn't. Yeah, just me rambling. Forget I was fearing that we might be incorrectly validating some documents, but I don't think we are. Hopefully. Yeah, we are not. Because we never changed the payload property. Never changed this one. This was kind of what I feared were now being validated without checking the, what's it called? The schema format. But it is not the case, so forget IOS.
So the topic is covered for now, right? Could I more or less know? Can you somehow let us know that, yeah, you know, now you understand everything and you know how to start?
Okay, thank you very much for explaining. I will look into issues and then see, I will take note of the things that you have explained. I will definitely see what we can do about that, and then what needs to be done, and then what is still not clear in this area, or what to do about, like the pointing of a schema to the JSON, pointing of binding a schema to the spec JSON schema. How can we resolve that? So I will read more about the related issues, and I will definitely comment on those issues, or I will create a new issue to explain the situation, or maybe get some point on those as well.
Okay. Jonas, did you provide link also to this discussion in the spec repo about the binding versioning? I think we had some related discussion. Not sure if it's mentioned in the issue.
This one, I think.
Yeah, from Gerald. Yeah, exactly. So also could I have a look on this one? And yeah, like as you said, like just ask questions. As you can see, these issues are pretty active.
Okay, thank you.
Do we call it a day?
Yes.
I would definitely want to. So we covered 2 topics from the agenda. Anything else from anyone? No. Sergio, you recorded, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And you normally could be a host when you started it from Slack, right?
I'm the host.
Okay, cool.
And you are co-host, I think.
Interesting. Which is a good news, by the way. And yeah, sorry, folks, for not organizing it properly, but I had a quarantine until yesterday, and right before meeting, police came in to check me if I'm still on the quarantine. So I had to spend some time with them figuring out why I'm still on the list of infected.
No worries.
But yeah, that's it if it comes to interesting things that happen. Thank you, Aayush. Now I'm good. I'm good. Police also left me. They didn't hit me for walking with my dog, so that's good. No, it's not. It's actually getting more relaxed. but it's we had some hiccups in COVID infections because of the amount of people evacuating from Ukraine. But yeah, it's I think they are actually even removing the requirement for masks in a few days. So spring is coming, no COVID, and then again September, October, we're back in business.
Everyone wants holidays and COVID as well.
Yeah, of course. Like COVID is tired as well. Thanks for warm words, folks. So yeah, thank you, Sergio, for jumping in. Thanks for showing that I'm actually not important and you can do the meetings without me. It's a good signal for the future. And yeah,
it was a pain. It was a pain. It was very difficult. I promise, Lukasz. You have to be here next time.
No. I mean, it's only first time it's difficult. Then it's gonna get easier. So Sergio, you will share somehow recording with me, of course. I'm gonna upload it to YouTube. So yeah, before we finish, 5 minutes left. Any final questions from anyone anyone wants to clarify, ask about something that was not in the agenda? From my side, I can only add that with the conference, I have no idea. Last weeks were not really easy to focus on long-term plans. So yeah, I plan to jump into the topic in the next days. In the mentorship program, yes, similar situation. So we were waiting like 2 weeks to see how people react to it, but I think that this mentorship program has the most interest in the community that I've seen so far. So I just need to summarize what people said about the program. So I will just write a summary there this or next week. And we need to, because it's again about spending money of the collective. So I need to summarize it and give it up for the voting of the technical steering committee. So to get an approval that we will do this program this year. And like what will be the rules, but yeah, you know more or less how AsyncAPI works. So everything will be there publicly done, nothing hidden. So I hope that we will have final answer before the next meeting in 2 weeks. Maybe already with the voting in place. But I guess like, wait, anything you want to discuss related to the issue docs feedback form? I don't know. Is there something are we stuck there? Sorry, I didn't check it lately, this feedback issue.
I think last comment what you made, we are actually waiting for the Alejandro's view on that discussion, right?
Yeah, I don't remember. So Alejandra did not yet say anything, right?
Yeah, just I want to ask that. I think you want to discuss right now, want to ask anything. Where should we do it?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna chase Alejandra and try to chase her through different channels. But yeah, I see it's basically her answer is blocking the further development. So yeah. So first of all, Alejandra, if you're watching the recording, we need you. But anyway, I'll try to talk to her on a separate channels.
Yeah, actually, I also want to discuss something that meanwhile I have discussed in the previous community meeting that you have made token regarding for the GitHub discussion, right? for this particular year. So while I was on one more issue regarding creation of the newsroom section, I think you have also discussed there something regarding the layout of that newsroom. Is it that?
So, I mean, I'm not aware of what's happening with the newsroom on websites. So I know that there was a plan to have it, but I personally, and I'm not watching the issue at all. I'm not even sure if there's a PR already, or you're still in the discussions in the issue.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of discussions between I and Missy and the Ritik at that time, and Missy had made a good design. I should say a very much simpler design on how it should look like. We had a discussion that it should have a particular section devoted for the YouTube to have a particular content, so that we have live streams and all our recordings to be mentioned there, and all our folks in the website should see it, what is the present updates about the meetings and all the videos about thinking out loud. And so what I searched about it, that we do need a key regarding that, although I haven't created the PR yet. This was quite a bit before I had discussed with Missy. So it may happen that I need to discuss regarding that a key should be generated for especially for the YouTube API.
So yeah, I can only advise you, like, try to ping folks in Slack, and because like I said, like I left it. So me personally, I love the idea of newsroom to make it super easy to access this, like the live streams or even the news about from Twitter, etc. But I left it for Maciej and Missy to like basically lead how it should look like. Especially that design is not my passion, even though some people say it is. So yeah, if there's something like blocking you there, just please ping again in the issue, because sometimes these notifications just are lost in the flood of other notifications, or just ping folks in the channel. It's completely fine if you do it. If you ask directly in the channel for feedback in the issue. We just have a lot of these issues across different repositories, and it's completely fine if you ping people in public and ask for opinion. I personally prefer this approach.
Yep, sure. We'll ping you there if any help is needed. Yeah, it will show that we are good help from your side.
Okay. Okay, so it's 10, at least in Poland. Thanks to all of you folks for joining. Yeah, sorry again for having it not where it was planned. And I hope today or tomorrow the recording will show up on YouTube. Thank you, Sergio, again for helping out.
Pleasure.
And see you in 2 weeks, folks.
Yeah.
Bye.